Howdy, I'm back. Shooting a video in the goat pen, sheep pen. We're all hanging out off camera, but maybe you'll get to see some while I record this video. But I wanted to talk today about computer programming, and I haven't done that in a while, so that's going to seem kind of like, why would he talk about that? He hasn't done any. He hasn't written a program in fucking, I don't even know how long, like 6 months. But I don't know if I've gotten my point across with it, or if I did, I feel like I did it incorrectly. I want to make it perfectly clear how I feel about it, so I'm going to just kind of do a short video on that today. Now to start this, I'm going to talk about my history with computers, my youth, things like that. So when I was a boy, a young child man, I didn't really get to do a whole lot of stuff. My family went on vacation and stuff occasionally, but for the most part, I spent a lot of my time alone in my room, which I feel like a lot of people probably did when they were young too. People like me, people that grew up like me. And I started using computers from a very young age. Now, I didn't have internet access for quite a while. It was around the time where it wasn't widely available. It wasn't something that was, as expected as it is now. Some people had dial-up. My parents didn't get dial-up until way fucking later. But I used computers offline probably since the age of 2 or 3 years old. And I just kind of fucked around, I'd move the mouse around, tap on keys and shit, whatever. It's just something to amuse a kid. I'd open Word documents and fuck the computer up, like get fucking, just fuck everything up, fuck it all up. I'd do because back in the old days, you could fuck with the Windows style. So I would just make everything like lime green and shitty and big. So I'd do that a lot. And then I'd draw in like MS Paint and shit. So that was my beginning with computers. Once we got the internet, I don't really remember the specific years that things happened, but I remember roughly when I was say like 7 or 8, maybe earlier, 6. Hey, knock it off. Leave him alone. When I was 7 or 8, probably around there, I got access to the internet through dial-up. I think through AOL. It might have been through some different broadband service, but I do remember using AOL for quite a little bit. I used like a chat room service on it, talked to other like 10-year-olds, which that wasn't weird back then. There were just chat rooms where like 10-year-olds would hang out, and there would be moderators that would like hang in there, and if anyone seemed like they weren't 10 years old, they'd fucking ban them. Pretty good shit. But so that was my experience with the internet. It was like fucking AOL chat rooms and fucking email and shit. I eventually figured out fucking RuneScape at some point. Like I dialed into RuneScape. I think this was after we stopped using AOL. It might have been during AOL. I don't remember, but I looked up like free MMO video game, and I got fucking RuneScape. And I enjoyed playing RuneScape. I really did. Back when Old School came out again, I played that for a little bit. Had a bit of fun. I don't enjoy it as much as I did as a kid, because when you're a kid, fucking video games are so crazy, because it's like, Abe, leave him alone. When you're a kid, video games seem like endless, especially a game like RuneScape. It's kind of, I don't know if you'd say open world, but like you can kind of do whatever you want. And it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. So after I played that for a bit, I started thinking, how did they make this game? And I thought about the design considerations as far as like how did they make it so you could like swap out armor and shit like that. Abe, be a good boy. How do you like swap out armor and shit like that? How did they get, like, did they have to draw the characters for each configuration of armor that you could put on? Like I was young, I didn't know. So at some point I started studying computer programming. I just typed in what was RuneScape made in, and the answer was Java, because it was a Java game. And somehow I ended up studying C. I don't really know how I ended up studying C. I think I tried studying Java and it pissed me off, so I just switched to C. But C and C++, because at the time I didn't really know the difference, because I was young. Those were the first languages I learned, computer programming languages I learned. And I mixed C and C++, the object orientation type stuff with the purely procedural. And I had a blast with it. I learned how to do Allegro. I did console fucking games. Like I think one of the first big projects I did was I did like a little dungeon crawler thing. It was really retarded, but it was a lot of fun to make. You know, it was really challenging. I don't really have any of my old code. It's all just gone because I went through so many computers. I think I have the hard drive that I did a lot of my early programming shit on, but I don't know if it's accessible, and I don't know where I put it. I also did some shit with like Game Maker 6 or 7, one of the two. Game Maker 6 or 7. I think I did 6. That might clue you into the roughly the time period, because I did that stuff kind of simultaneously. I learned the Game Maker, and I learned the C and C++ and the Game Maker programming language, whatever the fuck it was, roughly about the same time. Can you stop being a freak, please? And it was cool. I mean, it was interesting for a while. When you're young, you kind of just like fuck around, you tinker with things. And when you get something really basic to work, you feel a lot of pride because you don't know what the fuck you're doing. But as I got older, I started to kind of move away from Game Maker and started focusing more towards C++. A library I used for game creation was Allegro, which I think is, I forget if it's C. I think it's a C library, but you can use it in C++. And I worked on that, and I studied like physics, and I tried making like physics engines and stuff, and it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. So that's kind of like my beginning with computer programming. I wasn't really into web development, Abe, although I did it because it was just kind of one of those things. It was new. It was back in the web, not necessarily web 1.0. It was back when it was kind of changing over. But yeah, web. You just made stupid shit with HTML. There wasn't really a whole lot of CSS. You had like CSS tables and shit. And I fucked around a lot. You just mess a lot with fucking tables and field sets and oh my god, and things like that. So that was a lot of fun. Things were simpler back then. You didn't have to be a fucking design wizard to do shit that people cared about. You could put like an animated GIF on a page and make it spin in like a marquee or whatever the fuck, and people like that. You could use the blink tag. That was still around. But my early experiences with the programming were just shit that I wanted to do, shit that I studied. I was really interested in, it made me interested in mathematics, in physics, and other subjects that weren't really taught to me when I was that young. And it allowed me to study them. Like I learned basic algebra and shit way before I took algebra in school. And it made it a lot easier for me. And having a direct connection to mathematics made studying mathematics a lot more fun. And I feel like that, because I ended up getting pretty far with my study of mathematics in my life. You know, I'm not a fucking wizard. I'm not, you know, really good at algebraic topology or anything crazy like that. But I got through calculus 1, 2, and 3, and then I did linear algebra, and then fucking number theory, and all that shit. And then I kind of tapped out. Because after that point, I studied math, like more complicated math, for the application I could use for electromagnetics when I studied electrical engineering. And it was just really cool that I had something that I could tie the math to. 'Cause I know a lot of people don't enjoy studying mathematics because they don't have anything to tie it to, and it just seems really abstract and boring. But I always really enjoyed it because I could tie it back to stuff that I was interested in, which was computer programming, making physics engines, and little stupid video games. So I feel like that was a really productive thing. It motivated me to improve my studies, to get good grades, and to focus, because it made me, I wanted to be a better programmer, I wanted to be a better electrical engineer, boy. And it motivated me to study mathematics and physics, and eventually chemistry, and now I'm focused on biology for obvious reasons. But I think the most important thing is the intellectual curiosity that studying programming gave me. A lot of people I see, they don't have the courage to enter new fields of study or like start new things. Like a lot of people don't feel like they can pick up something, you know, something completely new, something they've never done before. Being able to think back to when I was younger and seeing how I developed these very useful skills really has made me confident in my ability to go forward with things that I don't know much about, like farming, raising livestock, things like that, without really doubting myself. So it's definitely, starting early was definitely a big confidence booster, and it helped me later in life, even though I was an awkward piece of shit for a very long time. We're gonna get back in sequence. So this is back. Now we're looking at like I think it was in middle school at this point. I had absolutely no idea how to talk to people because I was a fucking shut-in weirdo, and I struggled a lot with that. And that happened for a while. I was a fucking teenage boy, pre-teenage boy, and you know, with the hormones and shit, you fucking you don't know what the hell you're doing. And I just kind of, it made me more of a hermit because I got really, really anxious around people. So I'd spend even more and more time locked up studying shit, which I still enjoyed. And I still talk to people on the internet, which I don't think is healthy for a kid, by the way. I think a kid should have mostly in real life friends. That's just my opinion, you know, from what I saw. I think there's too much that can go wrong with internet friends when you're young. I don't recommend having internet friends when you're young. Just play with people that are around you. You know, why do you have to meet people on the internet? But I mean, I did have internet friends and stuff like that, and nothing bad happened to me. But I don't like looking back on it. I think I would have been better for my social development if I was around more kids. But anyways, so my studying intensified at that point, and a lot of teachers saw a lot of potential in me because I knew I was a very dedicated person, even though I looked like shit and smelled bad, kind of like I am right now, except you know, preteen, didn't shower, had like a really shitty mustache, didn't grow in all the way. That I kind of continued that way for a bit, and I started a little bit prior to this point. I started making websites for some friends of our family that needed websites. This was back when people were first trying to get an internet presence, so it was kind of a big business opportunity to make like shitty little websites for people. And I fucking hated it. I hate making websites. I still do for other people because it's really boring work. I just don't enjoy it. I never did, so I just whipped shit together with like a free CSS template and gave it to them, and I sold them for like fucking $500 to $1,000 a pop, which was really cheap back then, and it still is really cheap now, except I think people's standards are a lot higher. I can't really get away with the dumb bullshit I was doing before. So that was really booming. I feel like a lot of shit that I took advantage of was like, it was really the timing. Like, people didn't expect great websites back then, so you could kind of just get away with making stupid bullshit and people would pay you for it. I think now people's standards are a lot higher. So that was my first foray into business, I'd say, was making websites for people, friends, you know, businesses that were tangentially related to our family or the school district, things like that. And then a little bit later, I was hired at a Colders to write a inventory management program for telephones, which was my first experience writing software for iOS, which I did not like, and I still do not like. And that was in Objective-C. They didn't have Swift at the time. This was a while ago. I don't hate Objective-C now as much as I used to. I think there's some sticking points with it that are kind of good, but I definitely would not use it as like a main language. It's a little ugly, a lot ugly, and you know, I can see why they have different alternatives. Swift isn't much better in my opinion, but anyways, so I did that. That was over the winter. I got that in there. I think they paid me fucking like $3,000, $4,000, so that was kind of cool. So that was that, and then a little bit after that, I was hired by a vendor management software company in downtown Milwaukee, I think when I was like 14 or 15, to write automation scripts and shit to test their software. And that was a big job because they had a lot of components in their software, and I had to have everything randomized, and I really impressed with what I delivered. The deliverables I was giving them they were way beyond what they were expecting. The random data sets, pool sizes, things like that. They were really impressed. They hired me 3 consecutive summers, and I did work over the year from home for them. If they needed like a test suite done or anything like that, I did that for them. So I was in high school at that point, and my studies of programming shifted more towards sockets and electrical engineering because I found that stuff very interesting, and I was kind of reaching the end of my rope as far as game creation goes. Abe, knock it off. Because you need to be kind of creative to make games, and I'm not really good at art or music or really anything like that, so I kind of just tapped out of that. my studies became more concrete and they became more applied to electrical engineering and low-level stuff with computers because I found it interesting, especially with sockets. I studied socket programming for probably 3 or 4 years because I just found it fucking fascinating. And it's not really a thing that people do anymore because there's so many packaged solutions to do it. But back in the day, there weren't really, like, if you wanted to do socket programming, you needed to know how to write socket programs. You couldn't just whip out a fucking library and then have it, send packets and shit. That didn't exist. Or if it did, no one used it because they were really bloated. And that mattered back then. People didn't have fucking 32 gigs of memory. People had 2 gigs of memory, maybe, if they were rich. So, you had to kind of factor for that. I got really intense in high school with my studies. Like, I'd study in school, I'd print out little fucking documents and read them in class, and then when I'd get home, I'd just lock myself up in my room and implement shit that I read about. It was a lot of fun. I really did. I want to emphasize this. I had a lot of fun studying this shit. I loved it. It was my lifeblood. That was the shit that made me wake up every day. Really fucking, it got me going. I just loved it. I loved learning new things. I loved applying things. Theoretical things that I read about. It was fucking awesome. I loved it. And every time, this dog is freaking me out. Every time I would do something new, it would make me more confident in what I'd learned before, because a lot of times when I would implement something new, it was a summation and an addition based on things that I already knew. So it was a really big confidence booster because I kept getting better and better and better and better and better. And I mean, I spent fucking years, over a decade, studying and practicing this for work. I mean, if I didn't enjoy it at some level, I would have tapped out at some point. A young kid doesn't do that shit just because they're like, oh, well, I'm going to get a job doing it someday. You have to have some kind of passion for it. Because if you don't have a passion for it, you're not going to stick with it. And that's kind of, I want to stress that. I really did enjoy programming computers. I still do. I just don't really have the ability to do it. The things that in particular I'd like to do. Because I kind of took a more electrical engineering bend towards my studies near the end, because I got completely disillusioned with making video games. The Sockscape thing, I wish it would have worked out. I wish it was more feasible, but I don't see that happening. And I really enjoy OpenGL. I enjoy studying linear algebra and applying it in the shaders and stuff. I find that really interesting. It's just at the end of the day, it's difficult to do. I'm not skilled with visual things, and I enjoy studying theory more than I do designing. If I ever have a stable electric solution at some point, as in like I'm not using a generator, or my generator output is stable, or I've got solar, I'll probably continue my studies of electrical engineering, but for the moment I got too much other stuff going on. It's really just not advantageous to do that. This is where the story takes a turn for the worse in the chronology of my life. So I quit off of Provade early my 3rd year to work for a guy named Dave Westlake. I might censor his name, but I'm probably going to leave it in there. His name was Dave Westlake. Salesman type guy, very enthusiastic, had the gift of gab. You could sell something. Evidently not very well, because we'll get to that. But the dude was very charismatic, at least towards a 18, 19-year-old that didn't know what the fuck they were doing. So, he had that on top of me. He could fool a socially retarded 19-year-old into doing work for him for basically nothing. So, that's a pretty good skill to have. You always want to abuse 18 to 19-year-old boys, men, whatever you want to call them, to do free work for you. It's good. It's good strategy. So, basically, at this point, I was off on my own. I went to college for a bit and then dropped out because I didn't find any meaning in it. I went for computer programming. I already knew how to do it. People were already asking me to work for them, so I was like, why the fuck am I doing this? And I didn't enjoy, I went to UW-Madison. I did not enjoy the programs that were on the roster. But Dave kind of ran me ragged, and I did a lot of work for pennies on the dollar, and I'm being genuine. Like, I think at one point I was working so much I was making 25 cents an hour for what he was paying me. So Dave was he liked to chase shiny objects. He wasn't a very dedicated guy. At our peak, I think we had 10 active projects going on at the same time, all of them with scopes that are fucking enormous, like shit that if you had a team of 20 programmers, it would take them like a year to do, but it was just one poorly paid 18, 19-year-old fucking dude. And I mean, I am a hard fucking worker, and this was the first time I was ever really put to the metal because, when you're that young, you just do what people tell you to do. It's like if someone tells you, hey, I need to make this, I need this 10 fucking program suite, and I need it by the end of the month, and they all fucking calculate the mass of the sun using a paperclip. You're gonna fucking try to do it because you don't know any better, because you're young, you're inexperienced. And even though I had experience with work, everything that I was asked to do was reasonable up to this point. This was really the first time I had to negotiate with someone that was unreasonable. And the guy was a bit manipulative, and he knew I was very impressionable, and he kind of framed it like, why couldn't you do it? Why what's stopping you from doing it? Even though I was working fucking 20-hour days, sometimes multiple days in a row without sleeping, which was fucking insane. Just running myself completely fucking ragged. My living situation at the time was pretty unideal as well. I'm not going to get into that. This isn't about that. But shit was kind of fucked up for me, and it wasn't good. And this was making it way worse because I was fucking awake at night usually because I didn't want to interact with people because I was busy doing this stupid bullshit. I'd sleep like 4 or 5 hours in the middle of the day. It was fucking weird. It was just bizarre. But at the end of the day, this dude couldn't sell his fucking product to anybody, even though we were trying to implement shit that everyone apparently wanted. And I was trying to do it as quickly as possible, but Dave was overselling every single fucking time to shit that was not possible for me to do in any length of time, let alone in the fucking ridiculously small periods of time he was giving me to implement these features. So people got disappointed, and they were pissed off because he was promising shit that he didn't have ready and that I wasn't able to do because I was one person trying to fucking do all this stupid bullshit at once. At some point, he cut my pay because he didn't have enough money to pay me because I don't know what the hell he was doing. He bought a bunch of fancy fucking Macs and shit, so he's probably wasting his fucking money. And then he stopped paying me altogether, so I was like, okay, well, if you want your program, give me what you owe me. I quit. So eventually he paid me back, and I gave him his source code and shit. And that was a real fucking kicker, because that was fucking miserable, that whole circumstance. I couldn't afford to live. I was eating shit food all the time. I was stealing food. I had a very bad alcohol problem that was getting worse. I was addicted to caffeine. Like, it was about as bad as it could have been for like a first, real big boy job, as far as like not working summers or anything like that. It was fucking miserable. It was one of the worst experiences I've ever had in my entire life, and that is not a joke. I'm not saying that lightly. Had that not happened, I don't know if things would have went the way that they did. That experience kind of fucked me up in a lot of ways. It's like I was basically just cooking up fucking tens to hundreds of thousands of fucking lines of business logic over and 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 over again. And it just never ended. It just never fucking ended. There was always more features, there was always more shit, more bloat, never enough time. It was horrible. After that, I got a job at a metal stamping factory doing general IT, and then I did a lot of machine program translation and EDI stuff, just more business logic bullshit. And my direct boss, I'm not going to talk about the other management, but my direct boss was a very influential guy. He was a really cool dude. I still look up to him. He's a real fucking level-headed guy. He had a lot of interesting stories, interesting childhood, real cool guy. A lot of bad shit happened to him, but he kept his head up, and I really appreciate that. I really, really appreciate that quality in people. But I worked there for 2 years. It was a normal job. Sometimes I stayed late. Sometimes I worked 60, 70, 80 hours a week. But for the most, they paid me for it. I got paid overtime. And for the most part, it was just typical work. I mean, it was boring. You were in an office. Some of the stuff was cool. Getting to work with machines and machine code was pretty neat. But I was beginning to realize at this point that I didn't really want to do this as a living. And I just didn't really see where I could go from there with programming, where I would enjoy it. It was too sedentary, and it was beginning to affect my health. I was gaining weight. This is also tied in the fact that I was abusing alcohol, but it definitely was more than that. I was getting pretty chunky. That's not good. I had a lot of weird like health problems. Like I had heartburn, which is fucking weird for a 20-year-old. And I had some other fucking like minor joint issues and some other shit like that from living a sedentary life. And the issue with working full time in an office gig is it seems so paradoxical. It really does. It wears you out. You get home, you don't want to do shit. Like you're thinking all day like, oh man, I want to do this, that, and the other thing, and you're fucking pumped up. You sit in that car, you start going home, like, oh, do I really want to do that? Oh, do I want to do that? And you end up wasting the whole evening. You repeat that 2 years in a row. It drives you fucking insane. So I'm just sitting here trying to get shit done, and I'm a fucking piece of shit, and I can't motivate myself to get shit done because I'm working a lot at this company, and I don't work on my own projects. I'm not developing as a person, which was really getting on my nerves. But I was making good money. I was paid exceptionally well, especially as I got raises and shit as I continued to work there. But the question I had is that enough? Is that good enough for me to keep spending time in this field? And as I continued to think about that, and as I continued to consider alternatives in life, that's when I started to kind of decide, I don't know if I want to keep doing this. And the breaking point was when I got fired, basically, laid off. I completed what I was hired to do, which is the transition into a different ERP system. Not going to get into what that means. It's not the acronym you think it is. It's a different one that's a lot more boring. But after I was let go, I was like, what's tying me down here? Because I owned a house. And I was like, okay, I want to get rid of this fucking house. So I started working on selling it. I was working with a different guy who I won't name because I don't have any beef with this guy. I have no problems with him. He's a good guy. But I was starting to see some repeats of the patterns I had with Dave. Not as severe, but it was just starting to get on my nerves, and I didn't want to repeat that cycle again. And I found myself bound to the computer more so than when I was at fucking the metal stamping factory. So I said, okay, sorry, I'm kind of done here. And I started working on moving up north because I had purchased property here about a year before that point. Because we just went up there on the weekends, we being me and my friend Gabe. We came up here on weekends and just chilled out and had fun. I built this cabin that I'm in right now, which you'll see in the update video, which I'll hopefully do this week, we'll see. But I wanted to change my life up because I was not impressed with where I was going. I didn't like the patterns I was falling into, and it was really starting to depress me very heavily. And people that know me personally, people that spoke to me on my private cool kid chat room back when there were like no individual websites running, they know that I was kind of fucked in the head for quite a while. And there was some shit going down in my family. A lot of stuff was happening at the same time. It was really fucking me up. It's like I gotta do something. I gotta change my life, or I don't want to continue down this road. Because I imagine myself at like 350 fucking pounds, being a useless piece of shit, hating my job, hating my life, probably dating a woman I fucking didn't like. The thought of that fucking drove me insane. So I was like, okay, we're changing it up. We're doing something completely different. So I moved up north. At this point, Gabe's girlfriend was pregnant a few months. And they let me know, I think it was right around when I lost my job. It might have been right before that. I forget the timing. But we basically like swore an oath that we were going to fucking work as hard as possible to move up here and start getting some enterprises going. Because we were both tired of our fucking lives at that point. And we wanted shit to change. So fucking spat in our hands, shook hands, started working, sold my house, started renting a place up here. After I got that secured, they moved in. I moved to the cabin, got it ready for me to live in, and I've been living here all winter. It's been difficult. It has been fucking hard. But spring's coming. It's getting warmer. This week is going to be real nice. And it's all looking up, and this is going to be a crazy year. It's going to be fantastic. So that, I want to answer the question, why are you doing this now? Why have you suddenly started doing homesteading? Why are you raising animals? Why are you trying to grow crops? What's the impetus? The impetus is, I am a man that enjoys a challenge. I am a man that enjoys taking on new things, new experiences, learning all sorts of shit. The reason I liked programming when I was younger is because it was something that I knew absolutely nothing about. And I kept learning more and more and more and more. And it kept getting cooler and cooler and cooler. And I kept getting better. But there's a point where there's no real return. And that was the issue that I was having. I didn't enjoy it as much anymore. And my experiences in the workforce kind of put a real heavy damper on it. And I didn't want to do it for a living anymore. So because of that, I decided, okay, I don't want to stagnate, because that's a scary thought to me. I can't sit still. I'm a type of person that just needs to keep fucking doing new stuff. I love learning things. So I was looking at this. I had a bend towards this for a while. I'm not going to get into that. I always enjoyed doing long hikes and being out in the woods and shit. I always loved that. And I did a lot of that shit with Gabe, which is why we ended up going in on this shit together. So I wanted to just give it a shot, because I figured, I'm still pretty young. I had a lot of money at the time, and I wanted to see if we can make it work. Because even if this doesn't work out, and I'm pretty certain it will because I'm pretty confident, the investments are getting deep enough to the point where there's really no backing out of this right now. I mean, I could leave, but there's really nowhere for me to go. There's really nothing else for me to do. So I don't really know. We're just going to stick with it for now. But the reason I stopped doing programming is because I got burnt out. Doing it as a career ruined it for me. Because when you do something that you're passionate about as a career, if you're truly, truly passionate about it, if you're not working a good job, and odds are you're probably not going to work a job doing something that you actually want to do in your field, the last thing you want to do after coming home from sitting on a computer for fucking 8-9 hours is to come home and sit on a computer and write more fucking software. Like, it ruined it for me. It fucking ruined it. And I'd like to, in the future, come back to programming as a holistic hobby activity that I can do with a renewed vigor after stepping away from it for a few years, especially like electrical engineering. Like I said, I want to get back into that. But computer programming was one of the most foundational and impactful things that I ever did or decided to do with my life as a young child. It basically made me the man that I am now. It gave me the ability to analyze and come up with solutions to complex problems and break them down into pieces, which is enormous. It's important for any aspect of life. I have the utmost respect for computer programming and computer programmers, and I love the hobby, and I love what they do. I don't really see myself fitting into it anymore, unfortunately. I don't tend to get along with a lot of people that do it at this point, and the field has changed so much that it's hard to find people that genuinely want to talk about the type of stuff that I studied intensely back in the day. So we're kind of at an impasse. I don't really like talking to people on the internet that much anymore. Great community out there. Flashy.net, not Flash2.net, FlashII.net. A lot of great people on there, great mothers. You're going to love them. I got an account on there. I got a thread talking about the homestead where I got like long write-ups and stuff. I might do some like blog entries and journals and shit on there too. I'll link to that in the description of this video. So if you want to check out that cool shit, go sign up on Flashy. Go say hi to the people. Maybe you like them, maybe you don't. A lot of them are programmers. A lot of them are Dutch. If you like programmers or Dutch people, you probably like the people on Flashy. They're pretty great. But I don't see myself really fitting into the culture anymore. So sometimes you just gotta tap out. I get along better with people up here doing what I'm doing than I do with the average computer programmer at this point. So I don't know. It's kind of where we're at. I just kind of want to put that out there. If you're a computer programmer and you enjoy computer programming and you can find something to do with it, like if you can do a really cool project that's making you a lot of money and it's a passion project, pursue it. Why not? The only reason I stopped pursuing programming myself was because I got completely disillusioned with it and I didn't appreciate the money because I wasn't passionate about it. But if you can make something work and you can do something cool and you can make it something that you can make a living off of, that I think is fucking awesome. I have a lot of respect for people that can do that. So yeah, that's kind of it. Hopefully this was a little helpful, but yeah, see ya.